Hi everyone, my name is Giorgio, and I will um, walk you through and show you the basics of Illustrator. So let's get going. If you open up your Illustrator, um, it should look something like this, where you have previous work if you have used this before, and if you haven't, you can create a new file. By clicking create new, you can choose sort of pre, you can choose templates, or you can, if you go here and print, you will see more presets. So I'm going to create my own here, and I'm going to make it an A2 portrait. So it's 420 by 594. Click create and wait for it. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. Here at the top, here on the left, you have the sort of the basic toolbar, and on the right hand side, you have this panel with features that I will kind of walk you through throughout the tutorial. In case this is not opening, you can check this drop-down menu, and I would say that the kind of the best configuration is Essential Classic, because it will give you a toolbar at the top and the one on the left side and the right hand side. So the way Illustrator works is through vectors and lines, so it's kind of more precise than Photoshop. Again, it works with vectors instead of pixels, so it's kind of more exact. You have these two arrows here. One is for, they're both selection tools, and I'll show you what they do. So the first thing is how to draw a line with the pen tool. So if you click on pen tool, you'll be able to draw a line by clicking first to set the first anchor point, and then click again to set your second anchor point. By holding the Shift key, you will have orthogonal kind of directions. And if you keep clicking before releasing it, you can make that anchor point, you can give it a curve, and then this sort of thing should happen. But to stop it from doing this, you just click again on that anchor point, boom, and then press the escape button, and this is the line you should have. Now, a key thing is that Illustrator has strokes, works with strokes and fills. So in this panel here on the left hand side, you have a fill, which is it's basically the area within the lines that you create, and a stroke, and you can easily change those by double clicking. So for example, we're going to make this red, and we're going to make the fill yellow, just so you can see it. See, so this has automatically created one. But now if you select the pen tool again, we can close this shape. And when you know Illustrator has kind of detected the shapes to be closed, it will have this little circle next to the pen. Now, if we click on the selection tool again, it will select the whole of the shape we've just created. But if you select, if you click the direct selection tool, you will see that it will kind of animate in this way. And you can, by dragging one of these points, double clicking it, you can change some of the features of some of the path that you've just created. And then obviously you can change color. You can decide to not have a fill that way. And by clicking on the shape, all of these little circles should come up, and by dragging these, you can change the radius of the corners you've created. Now, with this selection tool, I'm just going to click the shape that we've created, and we're going to change the line weight of the stroke. So if you select this little guy here with the 3 lines, the stroke panel should open up. If you don't have it here, if you go on Windows, you can select this little guy and open it up. Here you are. So right now it's at 1, and you can change the cap. I generally use the round cap with round join, just because of a style kind of thing. And you can increase the weight. See how it changes here? You can increase the line weight for this. And you can also make the stroke, the line, you can make it a dash line, and you can dictate the dash and the gap. So right now it's at 12, and we're going to try and make it, let's say 20 with a gap of 20 to make it sort of uniform. Then you press enter, and you'll see that it's kind of automatic. Zooming in, you can either do it by option and using your mouse, the little wheel on your mouse, or I think it's Alt on a Windows on a PC, or you can use Control plus and Control minus, or Command plus, Command minus. I'm going to delete this now by using the backspace, so it's gone. Now I'll walk you through, I'll show you another way of drawing lines. If you select this little guy, the line segment tool, and keep pressing on the left button of your mouse, I'm holding Shift so that it's a horizontal line. Boom, you have a line here, and you can just make lines this way in case you, I don't know, maybe you want to draw a grid, I don't know. I'm going to delete these now, and I'm going to show you the kind of basic geometrical shapes. So here there's the rectangle tool, but if you keep clicking here, a little drop-down menu will appear with the other shapes that Illustrator can give you. So I'm going to now draw a rectangle. See, what it says here is that you have, this rectangle is going to have a stroke, but without a fill, but we want it the opposite way around. So you just swap the two, and you just draw a rectangle by clicking at one point and dragging, and then you release the click. And then we're going to draw a circle next to it, kind of overlapping. And we're going to change the color of this by double clicking the fill and just changing the color. I'm going to make it blue, just so that it's quite a contrasting color. Now, what we can do is, and it can be pretty useful when you're doing mappings, or when you are just generally when you're drawing shapes on Illustrator and you want something that is not easily it's not in this menu, or that it's a bit of an unconventional shape. If you select both of them, you can click on one and then press and hold Shift and select the other one. You can then go into the window panel, drop down menu, sorry, and you can select Pathfinder. Pathfinder will allow you to add shapes or subtract shapes. These are generally the main two that I use. And we're going to subtract this. So it will kind of do it automatically. So I want the circle, where they overlap, I want the circle to cut the rectangle. And this is the result you'll get. I'm going to press Command Z and go back to what it was. And you can also add shapes, but obviously this will now determine in one color, so that the shape that we're going to have is going to be of one color only. It's going to be blue. But I mean, you can just change this at any point with the color picker and the gradient. Now, I am going to show you how you can. I'm going to kind of do a shadow of this by using layers. So if you open up the layer, everything is on layer 1 now, because this is the kind of the basic configuration of it. We can add another layer, and you can click and drag this layer under the other one, pretty much like you would do on Photoshop. Now, I am going to click this one and hit Command or Control C for copy. And then I'm going to lock this layer here. And then I'm going to select the second layer, layer 2. And I'm going to press Command Shift V, which is paste in place. Or alternatively, you can just, I think you can do it from the edit. Yeah, paste in place. What we want to do now is kind of offset this shape that it's underneath to make it look like it could potentially be a shadow, and we're going to give it a darker shade of green in the fill. See? And so then we can lock this layer, and if you double click here, you can change the name of it, and we're going to call this shadow. And this is going to be, we can change the name of the layer 1, we're just going to call this shape 1, and hit enter when you're done. Another tool that can be quite useful is the pencil tool here, which is basically a freehand tool. I'm just going to invert these two so that we can see what we're drawing. And it can be pretty useful if you want to trace something, if you want to maybe draw a tree, or at least the foliage of a tree can be quite useful. You have to be very patient with this, but yeah, you can pretty much draw any shape you like as long as you're comfortable with using the mouse for it. And then we can, obviously in the stroke panel, we can change the cap and the corner and increase the line weight. Now I'm going to make this a solid. Sorry, I'm going to give it a fill and change the color to a different color, maybe orange, so it looks like an autumn leaf. Yeah. And this is pretty much, I would say, what you need to know in terms of basic commands. Strokes are here, layers, but you can find all of these in the window drop-down menu. And now I'm going to show you how you can work on a PDF that is an export from any kind of software that can produce one. So whether that is a Digimap, whether that is a PDF from CAD, Vectorworks, whatever you use, you can open it up on Illustrator and start editing that. So I'm going to close this and not save it. And I'm going to show you how you can open up a PDF on Illustrator. So, sorry. You will have to double click on the PDF and do open with Adobe Illustrator. Boom. It's going to show up in the sort of format that you have exported it in. And it should look something like this. So what we're going to do now is that we're going to clean up the drawing. And by that, I mean deleting a few lines to make it look a bit neater. We're going to draw a thicker outline around it. We're going to put the shadows on, and then we're going to see how to use hatches. And then I'm going to show you how you can trace the shadows and place them on top of this to kind of give it a more realistic look. So you might have noticed that if you simply drag the PDF into Illustrator, it's unlikely for the software to recognize the lines. But when you right click and use the open with Adobe Illustrator like we've done, Illustrator will recognize these lines, which is pretty useful. So what I'm going to do now with this selection tool, the direct selection tool, I am going to zoom in and click on a few lines to delete them. If you were to click with the selection tool, the standard selection tool, it's going to select, sometimes it can select the whole thing. So it's best that when you want to edit specific things, you use the direction selection tool. So I'm going to delete this little line so that it gives this kind of more neater look, and this one, and it's, sorry, this is worth mentioning. When you click on a line and you want to delete it, you have to press the backspace twice, because the first time you click, it will delete the line, but not the anchor point. So if you kind of delete it twice, it will automatically delete line and anchor points. Easy. I am going to delete this line here as well. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to extend this line over as if it was disappearing behind this corner of the room. To do that, you use the direct selection tool, select that anchor point, and it should become blue as opposed to white if it's not selected. And then you just simply click twice over it and keep pressed and drag that point to where you want it to be. You'll see that if it's in line with where it used to be, it's going to have this sort of pink, purple look or line over it. If it's not, it will simply be blue. So we want it to keep it straight and just make it touch that corner. Now, this is all on layer 1. So there's two ways of going about to kind of give this drawing a thicker outline. So you can either select lines one by one, or you can select kind of a few and by holding shift. By doing that, I'm going to zoom in so that it's kind of easier to select them. So once everything is selected, you can open up the stroke panel. So the basic kind of import took the lines to 0.25, but I want these lines to be slightly thicker, or maybe definitely thicker, and I'm going to give them a round cap and round join, and I want them to be maybe a 1. Let's see how it looks. No, I want them to be thicker than that, so I'm probably going to do 2. Yeah. See, this little line got selected, the whole of it got selected. So what we can do now is you can drag this point up to meet that line with the direct selection tool, or you can cut this line here in that point, and to do that you use the scissors tool, which I think the shortcut is C. Okay, they're here. Okay, they're hidden under the eraser tool. So if you click and keep press the eraser tool, you'll get the drop down menu, and you can use the scissor tool, and you can just simply click where you want it to cut, and it will cut that line there. So we want this line to be exactly like the other ones, and we're going to use this little guy, the eyedropper tool. So you're going to select what you want that line to become, and it will automatically do that. Another way of doing this, I'm going to go back and get the Command Z and go back to what it used to be before we change the line width. Yeah, exactly. Another way of doing this is by creating a new layer, locking the existing layer, and use the pen tool and basically trace over this with a thicker outline. So the stroke that we wanted is about 2. Yeah. So So we're just going to zoom in. By holding the space bar, the little hand will show up for you to kind of move the drawing around. I'm just going to go around. And now it should give us exactly, see, the little circle. So it's a kind of closed path. So ideally, obviously, if you wanted this to be a solid color, you would change that here. So instead of having none, you would have a color. This color would be white, but let's say we want it, I don't know, maybe, yeah, this shade. But we want it to be underneath. This sort of thing will happen. But we don't want that, so we're going to drag layer 1 under, and we're going to delete this because we want just an outline. So what I'm going to show you now is how to import the shadows and trace them. So we're going to go onto our desktop, and we're simply going to drag the shadows into the file. Okay, so if you've exported the shadows from maybe a 3D model like SketchUp, the ratio should be the same. It's obviously going to be bigger, but that's not an issue because you can just drag with the corner, drag them from the corner, and they should ideally overlap quite precisely. We don't want these to be on the same layers. We want to give these shadows a new layer. So we're going to select these with the selection tool, edit, cut. We're going to lock this layer. So it's a neater way of working when you lock layers so that you don't mess with what's underneath. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to edit, paste in place. So they're going to be here. So to see the kind of immediate result of the shadows, whether they're accurate or not in terms of positioning, you can lower the opacity here. Yeah, so they are not aligning right now. And you can just drag them kind of around until they match your drawing. So we're going to do that now. And you can also use the kind of direction keys to do that. So apparently the shadows are slightly bigger. So this is sort of like a game of increasing and reducing the size of the image to make it match. By image, I mean the shadows, to make it match your drawing. So we want them to be, they need to be smaller because they need to fit into this shapes. And then we're going to move them around and see how we're doing. Okay, so they need to be smaller because you can see that they're not aligning with the drawing underneath. If you press shift, it will keep the ratio while you do this. Should be something like this. I'm just zooming in and out to make sure that they're correct. Sometimes they can also not be 100% precise, and you can just, you can just make them up as you go, or have the picture and the image underneath as a general understanding of what they would behave and how light would behave, and then you can just freestyle them really. Okay, so now that the shadows are in place, we're going to keep the opacity to what we've set it. This is 73%. I mean, it's not a kind of set number. It's not set in stone. It's just what works best for you and what works best for the drawing underneath. And we're going to lock this layer and create a new layer. And we're going to trace these shadows with the pen tool. So we're just going to go around. Obviously, see, there's a bit of it's not being 100% precise here, but we know that the shadow would kind of start from the corner. So we're going to take it all the way down to this corner, and I'm just going to keep tracing this. I'm holding spacebar and clicking. Then when you release, it will go back to the tool you were using, which is the pen. So that's one shape completed. And we are going to invert the fill and stroke so that it is a solid rather than a line. And then on to the next ones. But now see, you can't really see what's behind, so we're going to invert them again so that we can see. And again. Invert them. So fine. And then invert them here again. It should automatically kind of detect the drawing underneath, so you will kind of feel, in air quotes, the pen tool snapping to the corner or to any kind of underlying anchor point. So we're going to go over this whole shape, and then we're going to subtract that little triangle with the Pathfinder tool that we've looked at before. Okay, I'm not going to invert these at the moment. I will do it after I've kind of drawn that little subtracting shape. Okay, so now if we with the selection tool V, we are going to click the big one and swap, and then kind of hover over the little triangle, invert that, and we're going to give it a different color so that we can just see it better. Okay, there we go. Now if we select both of these lines with the shift, holding shift, or just by clicking, holding, and hovering on top of the tool, it will have selected both. So if we open the Pathfinder, we are going to subtract minus front. There we go. So these are the shadows of our room right now. We can increase the opacity of these by clicking all of them individually. And because these are the only shapes on this layer, we can use Control A or Command A, which is select all. So they're all here. Alternatively, what you can do is click this little circle right next to the layer name, and it will select everything that's on the layer. By selecting these, we can decrease the opacity so they assume that grayish tone, and they would look more like shadows. But what you want to do really, because this has a lower opacity, it's going to obviously show everything that's underneath, including the JPEG that we imported for the shadows. So you want to kind of hide that layer. Okay, see how it's a lot different now. So we're going to increase these so that we can actually see them. And here you go. And obviously you can make, if depending on what drawing you're making, depending on what your style of drawing is and your sort of visual identity is, you can change the color of these. And you can make them in different colors if you're more of a monochromatic person, really. So we're going to bring them back to 100% of opacity. because we are going to give them a hatched look, so they're going to be all lines. So click here again, opacity back to 100%. So what you want to do now is select all of it with Command A or Control A on Mac, sorry, on a PC, and then you want to open up the window panel and you want, where are they? The swatches, okay, yeah, so I forgot what they were called, okay. If you click on the little books here, the library is going to show up. What you want is patterns, basic graphic, lines. I generally just use the first one, but obviously that depends on what you are making. So we're going to select, click on here, and make sure you are on the fill and not on the stroke. Otherwise, this selection will go onto the stroke, which is the outline, rather than on the color. So you want to be on here on the fill, and then click there. So these are now all lines, and they're all the same. So, but we don't want them to be horizontal. We want them to be vertical. So what you can do now is either use Command A, or a good kind of tool to select things when you have, I mean, this will kind of affect you when you have more complex drawings or different shapes or different colors. A way of selecting this is by clicking one of them with the selection tool with the V, and then go up into select, same. So these will obviously, these all have the same fill color. So if you select this criteria, fill color, everything with that specific fill will be selected and be part of your selection. Here we go. So we want them to be vertical. So what we're going to do is go into Object, Transform, Rotate. This little menu should pop up, and we want to only transform the patterns, not the objects. And we want them to be vertical. So as of now, it will be a rotation of 90 degrees. And then if you untick and tick preview, it will give you, like, here we go, the look that you want to give. Another kind of important thing is how you can scale these and make them much bigger or much smaller. So what we're going to do is, again, select everything. I'm going to do it by pressing Command A, going to Object, kind of the same thing we've done before, Transform. Instead of Rotate, we're going to go into Scale and Transform Patterns only, not objects, but we do want a preview. And we're going to we want them smaller, maybe by 50%. Okay. Now they're kind of more dense, and you can read them more as a shadow rather than kind of just vertical lines here and there. What we're going to do now is look at how you can color this drawing with the Live Paint tool. So we're going to, as of now, we're going to lock this layer and hide it. We are going to hide the outline, and we're going to focus on the layer one, which, let's call it base drawing. We're going to call the second one outline by double clicking. Then this layer, really, the shadow that we've imported, we can actually delete it because we have the shadows now, so we don't really care at this point. So you can delete that layer. And now we're going to call this layer shadows. Okay, so what you are going to do now is unlock the base drawing. You can select everything with Command A, and then hidden, I think it's hidden here. Yeah, hidden under Shape Builder, there's the Live Paint bucket. So if you select that, you should have this little bucket with, and as soon as you hover it on top of the drawing, it will become red and say click to make a Live Paint group. So you do that, and now it's a live paint group, which means that it will recognize the shapes, and you can give them different colors. So an important thing is that now you have to kind of change the aspect of this. So to kind of give them a color but not a fill, you will have to kind of click away, edit that. So we don't want a stroke, but we do want a fill, and we are going to make a kind of, maybe, I don't know, mustard yellow and white floor. Maybe this shade of yellow. Yeah. And again, by clicking the live paint bucket, the Illustrator obviously knows that you've done that before, as in that you've made this whole thing a live group. And just by clicking, you will start coloring in your drawing. So I'm going to do the floor really quick. I've messed this one up, so Command Z. Okay, and now you can click away. So let's say you've realized that yellow is not really the color you want, like in this case, for example. You can double click here and you can pick another color. Let's say we want it to be a kind of dark red. What you can do now is, by clicking K or the live paint bucket, shortcuts are really useful. So when you hover on top of them, on top of the commands, it will come up, and it's useful for you to know what the shortcuts are. Really, it makes you a lot faster. If you click onto one color for 3 times, it will change all the shapes that have that color into the new one. So I'm going to click here 3 times, and all the yellow should become red now. Here we go. Okay, I'm going to give these other shapes another color. So we want maybe that to be sort of concrete. We want the bench maybe to be a shade of pink. Let's say the front of it is going to be in this shade, and obviously you can use this also to enhance the 3 dimensions. So obviously, if this is going to be this shade of pink, the inside that is not getting any light is going to be darker. So you pick a different shade and you color that into it with a different shade of pink. The side is going to be lighter because we know that the kind of the sun, or the source of light, is coming from that side. So we're going to pick a lighter shade of pink for this, and then maybe for the top of it, we're going to go in between these two. So let's see how that works. Okay, yeah, so it looks sort of 3-dimensional now. Again, you can give, you can give the color to the walls if you want to. I'm gonna just go maybe with this. Maybe it's too pink, I don't know. But this is, bear in mind that this is the darkest wall out of these two. So this actually is going to be the light one, and this one is going to be slightly darker. Just do that. Okay. And then the inside, the reveal of the windows, is going to be slightly darker. This is it for now. So what you can do now is you can bring back the outline, and you can bring back your shadows. The shadows are now are obviously hatches now. So what we want to do is select all of the shadows, and maybe, if you're doing, again, a monochromatic drawing, you might want these shadows to be red, for example. So what you can do, by using this little wheel up here, when you've selected everything, you can recolor the artwork. So these are all the colors present here in this drawing at the moment. But obviously we know that it's giving us all of the colors because this layer, the layer of the base drawing, is not locked. So if we now lock this drawing, this layer, and we redo the artwork, the Recolor Artwork, exactly, only the color of the hatch will show up. If you double click here, you can edit the color, and we're gonna go for like a kind of cherry red. What you have to do to make the change is click on that line that will become an arrow. Boom. Now all of your shadows are, all of the lines on your hatch are now that color. And this is quite useful when, sorry, did I do it? Maybe I didn't confirm it. Oh yeah, I pressed cancel instead of, okay. This is quite helpful when you're doing mappings, for example, and you don't want to use a fill color, like a solid color, a block, and you want to use hatches. It can be quite helpful, to be honest with you. What we want to do now maybe is change the color of the outline. So we've locked the shadow layer, we've locked the base drawing, only the outline layer is kind of unlocked. And if we press Command A and select everything now, only that content will be highlighted. And we want that to be red, maybe. This is what it looks like. We don't like it. We're going to take it back to black. This is quite useful for maybe if you want to visualize something easily when you export from SketchUp, if you want to make a simple diagram, if you want to make, for example, a massing, if you've made a massing model on SketchUp and you just want to give the massing sort of 3-dimension with shadows or just with color, you can simply just use this, and obviously you can annotate it, and it's quite a helpful piece of software to know, especially again for mappings. And I think I've made all of my final drawings in third year at London Met. I think I'm pretty sure I've made all of them with Illustrator. What we can do now is, maybe if we don't want those to be that dark gray, we want them to kind of seem like a concrete texture. So what we're going to do is we are going to give those the hatch, or a hatch that is most similar to what concrete looks like generally. So we are going to select the base drawing with the V, with the selection tool. So obviously now this has been made a live group, which is it can be a bit of a pain because that means that you can't really edit it. So what you can do now is expand the live paint. So it converts it back to kind of shapes and lines. But the useful thing is that now all of these shapes are individual. So if you select them with the direction select tool, you'll see that all of these shapes are now individual and they have their own fill and their own stroke. So if we select these guys now by holding Shift or by clicking one and doing select same fill color, exactly, we can click on the fill and we can change it to, maybe we want basic graphic textures. Yeah, we want something, do we want this or do we want something that looks more like dots? This one could be quite good. And remember, you can overlap them. So if you play with the layers and you copy and paste a shape on a different layer and paste that shape in place, you can obviously overlap these hatches. So I'm going to show that to you after we've changed the concrete. Yeah, maybe we want this. Yeah, maybe we want this. But we might want these guys to be, the texture to be slightly denser. So what we'll do is select the same fill color object, transform, scale. This is too much, so maybe we'll go for a 70 and see what happens. Yeah. And we want this to be kind of the same color palette as the rest of it. So we're going to go into Recolor Artwork, double click, select a red that is slightly dark. Bright colors don't really work, or light colors don't really work when it's sort of these little lines. It's better to use darker shades in my experience. I'm going to use the arrow. Okay, and there you go. Okay. So if you want to kind of give an additional depth to these shadows or to part of your drawings, you can create a new layer. Always lock everything to keep it tidy. And you can create a new set of shadows that we're going to call shadows 2. What you want to do now is basically trace and create a shape for the darkest or the darker bits of your drawing. I'm going to do this wall, this reveal, and this reveal. You don't want the fill to be the kind of concrete texture. For now, we want maybe a white or maybe nothing at all. And we want the stroke to be black so that you can see what you're drawing. And with the pen tool, we're just going to go over the shape and draw around it. So this is one. This is another one. I'm just simply clicking. Okay, and now we have the 3 of them. So now we want to have, we basically want the same text, the same texture, the same hatch that our standard shadows have, but we want to give it a different direction so that the lines overlap and they read as a kind of denser color. So we're going to use the eyedropper tool with these selected, and we're going to click on the previous hatch. So obviously now they're sort of overlapping, so you won't be able to perfectly see them, but we're going to rotate them so that they can give that effect. Rotate, and we want them to be, see, at 90% they will make a grid, which is not really what we want right now, but you know, it's useful to know. Let's try with 45 angle degree. Yeah, this is what we want. Okay, and this is how they look darker. So if we're going to save this now, you can save, if you save this, because we've opened it as a PDF, you can save it as a PDF. See, and it will stay as a PDF file, or you can save as an Illustrator file. I'm just going to save it on the desktop, and we're going to save it as an Illustrator file, and we're just going to call it ISO drawing color. Save. Yeah, and everything's okay. You can save to previous versions, and this is it.